This is solo practice routine number 5, and I call it the nicely tightly. It's perfect for doing just after you come back from lockdown, but it's not easy. Now what it does is it improves your micro timing. Your micro timing is the difference between hitting the ball like this and hitting the ball like this. And in the real game, that can make a huge difference. It's the difference between hitting tight or hitting back into the middle of the court or hitting the sidewall too early. The prerequisite for this is being able to hit at least 10 side to sides with no mistake, and you're a club player. This is not really a beginner exercise. Now, it lasts 12 minutes. That's how long I've allocated for it. But like all of my routines, you can adjust it to suit your needs. You can increase or decrease individual drills or all of them at the same time. You can choose to do that. Now, as with all of the solo practice routines that I talk about, please make sure you heat up properly. You should be sweating before you hit the ball, even for solo practice. So that's really important. Make sure you do that. Now, under normal circumstances, I would be using my goggles. But of course, once I put my mask on, these are going to fog up, so that's not going to happen. I'm also going to be using my targets. Now, you don't have to use targets, but I love using targets, so I will be using these. These are basically very thin rulers that I put on the ground to aim at, because that really, really helps. Now, for this particular routine, I will be using the Ashaway Powerkill 115 ZX. I'm going to be using this because it's a great all-round racket, and because it's only the 3rd time since I've come back after a 2-year break, I wanted something that was quite forgiving and good for all types of shots. A full review of this can be found on my channel. You can see the link in the text description, or maybe depending on the device you're watching on, you might see it on the screen at the moment. Now, talking about rackets and racket reviews, I've still got 3 Grays rackets to review, and I'll be adding those soon, so look out for those. There's a poster available for this routine which allows you to see what you're supposed to do. So after you've watched this video and I've explained everything, then you can download and print that. It's a high resolution, so you should be able to print it at very high sizes. And then you can just carry it in your bag or put it on the notice board with your club's permission, of course, to remind people what they should be doing. There's a QR code on it that will link back to this video. And let's start with that poster and start talking about the overview. On the right is the poster. On the left is the routine overview. The first thing you'll notice is that it's split into 4 mini sets. You'll also notice that some drills are repeated. This is a key feature of my routines. It allows you plenty of time to improve without the negative aspects of doing a drill for too long. Remember, you can adjust the times to suit your circumstances. Feel free to increase or decrease any of the drills by as much or as little as you want. I recommend using a timer on your smartphone, as I found it's the easiest way, especially if each drill has a different time, and because you could even use a Bluetooth speaker to make sure you don't miss the changeover beep. I use interval timer, but I'm sure there are others just as good. However, in this routine, because all the drills are for the same time, a countdown timer on a sports watch would work just as well. You could even time each drill, count the number of shots, and use that number as your guide in the future instead of using a timer. I started on the forehand, but you could start on the backhand if you prefer. You can even change the order of the mini sets, but I suggest you keep the order within the mini set the same. One last thing. Here are my solo practice principles. If they're new to you, please pause the video now and read them. Otherwise, let's move on to each drill. As I've already mentioned, the prerequisite for this routine is to be able to hit at least 10 side-to-side shots with no mistake. Normally, I want you to keep your shots within the service box width, but for these ones, I want you to be walking forward all the time. By walking forward after each shot, you're hitting the ball away from yourself. The smaller the steps, the more accurate you are. When the ball is close to the sidewall, hitting anything but parallel to the wall would be bad. But when the ball is quite far away from the wall, judging the angle to get it back into the corner is very important. Let's look at a real world type situation. Imagine in a rally, your opponent hits the ball near the middle of the court. Your objective is to hit the ball into the corner as deep as possible. If you angle this shot too much to the right, it will hit the sidewall too early and bounce near the service box, giving your opponent the advantage. If you angle the shot too much to the left, it will come back down the middle and you would have lost the opportunity to put your opponent under pressure. So where do you need to aim the ball? Well, I'll be talking more about angles in a special video, but for now, aim at the front wall about halfway between the point of contact and the sidewall. This should get the ball back into the corner. This micro timing is the whole reason for this routine. Watch as I manage to hit the ball in the right place. It hit the target, which means that would be very difficult to return. The better the player, the more often this can be performed in matches. Here's a close-up of the differences. Making contact like this will return the ball parallel. Hitting like this will hit the ball away from you. And hitting the ball like this will hit it back to you. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's the idea I want you to have in your mind. So, let's get back to those side to sides. The purpose of this drill is to help you become more aware of micro angles. Don't worry if you hit the ball parallel or even back towards yourself. Just keep trying to hit it away from yourself. When you get to the front wall, you can either turn around or run backwards and start again. Do not try to hit the ball more than 80% your maximum. You might think I don't need to tell you anything about this drill, right? It's the most common solo drill ever. But just because you may have done thousands of shots like this before, doesn't mean you've been doing it properly. For this drill, I want you to be as consistent as possible. I'm less worried about how far away the ball is from the wall, as I am about minimizing the difference between the best and the worst shot. In addition to the consistent width, I want you to focus on the height the ball hits the front wall and especially the speed. Watch what happens when I first start on the forehand. Notice the first few shots are different heights and different speeds. Now watch how when I focus on hitting just above the cut line and hitting at exactly the same speed, how much better they are. Listen to the sound on the second set. It's so much more consistent. Ideally, you're letting the ball come off the back wall, but if that's too hard, hit them before it gets to the back wall. If you've watched the full video thus far, you will have seen my explanation about this already. I introduced it near the beginning because I wanted you to know why you were doing the side-to-sides moving forward. As I said, this is the real world test. This is the whole reason for this routine. One of the biggest differences between different standards of squash players is the ability to hit shots from about the service box width back into the corner. It's a lot harder than it might seem. Lower standards of players will sometimes hit the ball parallel, meaning it comes back to more or less where they hit it from, or more often too late, so that the ball hits the front wall too far to the right, then hits the side wall too early and bounces in the middle of the court. This drill consists of two shots, the feed and the drive. The feed is hit slower than the drive to condition your mind not to hit weak drives. Aim to hit the feed about a service box width away from the sidewall. You can see my target on the floor, although you don't really need one because it's the same as the line of the service box, but I like using it. Again, as I've already said, your drive should hit the front wall about halfway between the point of contact and the side wall. Don't worry if you find hitting a good feed just as difficult as the drive. It's quite possibly the first time you've done it, and you will get better. Why would anybody do this? You will never have to do this in a game, so why practice it? Because it really shows how well you can time the ball. Hitting a straight drive with the sidewall to guide you is easy compared to this. The likelihood is the first time you try it, you will be moving a lot. In some ways, it's the ultimate test for hitting straight. It gives you plenty of practice at timing the ball parallel, early and late. Blast! I broke the ball. But this is the perfect time to remind you to always hold a spare ball in your other hand. I didn't in this case because I was moving the camera around every couple of minutes, but when I do a routine without recording, I always do hold one. It keeps it quite warm and means you can almost continue immediately if you do break a ball. Ideally, I would like you to aim to keep the ball bouncing off the back wall within the width of the door, assuming you have the door there. Like the straight drives, aim for consistency regarding where the ball hits on the front wall and how hard you hit it. Okay, so that was solo practice routine number 5, the nicely tightly. If you've got any questions, comments, suggestions, ideas or doubts, post them in comments and I'll respond as soon as possible. And remember, do something every single day to improve your squash. See ya.